Charles?
How do you?
Okay, I have another question for you.
All right, fire away.
This is from Mark T, who has actually provided several really good questions. I think we're going to answer all of them, but we can't answer some of them, some of his really good ones till tomorrow because they involve using a weapon. We're not set up to do weapons today. Anyway, his question that we can answer tonight, I hope, is any stories, anecdotes, etc. he might have heard about saber fencing in the 1800s in the USA, tales of old sows, duels, and so on. And I happen to know from having been a student of yours that you have dueling stories. So I don't know if you know anything about 1800s or old saber anecdotes, but I definitely know that you have dueling stories, and I've actually written a list in case you've forgotten of any of them. So I'll see how you do, and I'll remind you if you don't remember some of them.
Yeah, you're in charge here. Okay, should we start with the 1800s dueling story?
That'd be great. I don't know that one.
Oh, okay. I have one story, and it's a duel that Abraham Lincoln got into.
Wow.
When Abraham Lincoln was a young man. I've never tried to tell this story. I've just read about it, so the details may not be totally accurate, but the general gist of the story is, and it actually happened. And a hot-headed politician challenged Abraham Lincoln to a duel. And Lincoln said, all right, what are the weapons? And the guy says, name your weapon. And Lincoln said, we'll do it with sabers. And so they met early in the morning in the woods, under a tree, under an oak tree, according to the story. And this guy came out there just snorting. His blood was up, you know, and the blood in eye. He's going to kill Abraham Lincoln. It was a political quarrel, you might guess.
Was he president yet?
No.
I didn't think it would be very presidential to be in a duel.
Oh no, he was still a young lawyer in Illinois. And according to the story I got, they met in the woods, you know, and this guy was really hostile. He was out to kill Lincoln, see. And they had seconds with him. It was a formal setup, see, and this guy was standing at his end, off to the side, getting ready, warming up, and he had this big saber in his hand, and Lincoln was standing at his end with his seconds, with his saber in his hand, and just before they started the duel, Lincoln walked over under the tree, and he reached up with the saber, and he snipped off a limb off of one of the branches.
It was going to be in his way or something.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. It was just a whimsical thing. He walked over.
Oh, I see, just...
And he reached up and went, poof. He had this long reach, see.
Yeah, he's a pretty tall guy, huh?
Yeah.
He's left-handed too, isn't he?
I have no idea.
I think Abraham Lincoln was a left-handed.
Really?
Yeah, they did some study about presidents, and there was like heaps of presidents that were left-handed. Like Clinton was left-handed, and...
Oh my God.
I think... Well, I don't know about Carter, but yeah, there was a whole bunch of them. And I think Abraham Lincoln was one of them.
Okay, now that you've destroyed my
Sorry.
story.
Okay, reached up and got that thing.
Could we do a tape on left-handed presidents? No, so he walked over and he reached up and he snipped off a small limb. And the guy who was fighting saw that. He saw that long reaching way up, and he threw his saber down and left.
Oh, really?
He wasn't about to take him on. As mad as he was, that was a very sobering moment to see a man with a saber that had to reach that long, see. And according to the storyteller, Lincoln knew what he was doing. He knew that much intimidation would happen.
Oh, okay.
So that's the 1800s dueling story. No, I can't swear that's true, but it's a good story. It's a good story, yeah. I think it is true. And what was the other one? Hans Halberstadt.
Yeah, Hans?
Yeah, Hans Halberstadt, yeah.
He had a couple of duels, didn't he?
No. He had one duel in his life. Hans didn't approve of that sort of thing. Hans did not approve of violence of any kind. And but as Hans said, he was young and stupid. And that's how he got dragged into this thing.
So when was this, in the 20s or something?
It was just after the First World War, about 1921, I think. And he'd just come home from the service. Hans, whether you realize it, was a decorated war hero in the First World War for Germany. And he earned the Iron Cross, first class. It was hung on his neck, personally, by the crazy Kaiser, Wilhelm.
Yeah, Kaiser Wilhelm.
And in the salle, you see that very medal hanging up on the wall there.
Not for long.
But anyway, Hans we'll do a whole tape on him someday, a whole DVD on Hans. He was one of the most dear and original personalities I've ever met. He was like, you think of George Burns and you'll think of Hans Halberstadt. Hans was not a big guy, and he had a lot of one-liners all the time. And at the end of his fencing day, on Fridays, he would invite select people from the fencing cell to the back room, which was his kitchen, to have a glass of wine. Hans liked to sit and have a little wine and bread and with his friends and talk, you know. And he was very sociable, very warm man. And but he for some reason, he decided to tell us about the duel that he was in when he came back from the war. And now Hans in Germany was the #1 saber fencer.
Oh really?
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
Absolutely, he was #1. And he was a top épée fencer. He was on the German Olympic épée team. He was the real article, you know. And he always fenced because he just loved it. And in San Francisco, he would appear at all the tournaments. You'd see over against the wall, Hans sitting there puffing a cigar. He'd love to watch fencing, whether beginning, you know, novice fencing or advanced fencing, whatever was going on. Hans loved to watch it. And he was very good at giving very good, warm advice to young fencers who needed some advice. He was a true fencing master. But we were sitting there at his kitchen table, having wine, and Hans was having a big snifter of brandy. He liked to end his week with a nice brandy. He wasn't much of a drinker, but he enjoyed what he did drink. You know, he was a classy guy. And somebody asked him, got into talking about dueling.
Have you ever had a duel?
Huh?
Have you ever had a duel, Hans?
Yeah, that's about it. Have you ever had a duel? Yes.
Yeah.
And Hans, it turns out, had a duel. And it was some guy that, it was political. And some guy called him out, and like Hans said, he never would have answered him if he had been even a year older. Because he said, I was young and I was stupid. And big egos. So they met on the dueling ground, and the whole formal thing, seconds there.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, this was
So was it first blood or?
Yeah, this is just for first blood. It was not. It was not to death.
Thank goodness. Yes.
Yeah, and that it was at that. You got to understand at that time that was sort of common. The upper class Germans would do that. They would go out first. One of the duelists would show his wrist, the other one would ticket. So the duel was official.
That was it then?
Yeah, then they'd go have dinner together. They defended their honor. It was a social thing. See.
I know I'm interrupting, but that's very different from when they take the scar too, isn't it?
Well, it was the same tradition. That's the Schlager. Yeah, they take the scar, and boy, that scar was
real prestigious.
Oh boy, that was their Phi Beta Kappa key. You know, that got them. That meant that they were the top 10% of graduate division level work. You know, the PhD level work.
How weird is that?
Yeah. It's just, you walk in looking for a job in industry with that scar there. You were preferred. They felt that it attested a certain kind of manliness, you know. But so Hans is in the dueling ground. See, Hans is sitting at the kitchen table. He lived behind the cell. See, and sitting at that table, telling us they exchanged a couple of moves, and then the guy attacked. Now Hans was an épée fencer. I told you that, I guess. Attacked, and Hans said, "Yeah." He said, "I put the point right there." He pointed at his owner. He said, yeah, I put the point right there. He said, it traveled up his arm. He says, it carved its way all the way up to the joint. And when I reached the joint, I went,
Oh. That's horrible.
Yeah. And he said, I put it there, it went up his arm, and when I reached the joint, I went, he says, he sat back, twirling his glass. He says, yeah, I crippled him for life. He says, and we're all sitting there, But as Hans explained, it was a different time, you know, and it wasn't to kill.
God, that was almost 100 years ago now.
Yeah. So Hans had an authentic duel, and if you knew Hans, the story would even be better, because he was
bigger than life.
He was bigger than life. He was such a character. And the other duel that we know about, and if you want to read it firsthand, it's in Eldonadi's book on fencing.
Oh, this was Noddy's duel, yeah.
Yeah, Eldonadi.
I did read that once, but I don't remember it.
Oh, it's the best description of a duel. And this was to first blood too, see. And as Noddy said himself, that he would never, he was young and stupid and full of ego. And you know, Noddy was an egomaniac in many ways. But a sports writer criticized Noddy and said that Noddy was no good, that his reputation as a fencer was all concocted, that the real fencer in his family was Nido, his brother, and that Noddy was a phony. It was just a scathing thing. The guy hated Noddy for some reason. It wasn't hard to hate Noddy. Noddy would tell assholes who they were, you know. Forgive the
French, the Italian.
Yeah, forgive the Italians. But they met on a racetrack in Milan early in the morning, just after daybreak. Noddy commented about the condition of the ground. It was gravelly and slippery. And the gravel, he couldn't really get...
So who challenged who? Just backing up a bit.
The sports writer challenged Noddy.
Oh, so he said all this stuff and challenged him, so he figured Noddy was frail and he could just wipe him.
Right. He figured Noddy would just... It was just writing. See?
Yeah.
Noddy sent him a note immediately. He said, I'll meet you any place, any time.
Yeah. Any weapon? Yeah.
Any weapon, any place, any time. The guy chose épées, but that was his first mistake.
Yeah.
And the guy had fought several duels before this.
Okay, so he was a bit duel crazy.
He was duel crazy, a crazy guy.
And what year was this?
I would guess. See, in the book he gives the exact year. I don't know, but I would guess it had to be sometime in the early 20s, I would think.
So same sort of thing, after First World War, before Second World War.
Right. Yeah. There was a big fencing revival after the First World War. And the golden age of fencing was in the 20s, 1920 to 1934, really. It all came to an end with Nazi Germany. That stopped it, see. Yeah. But, there was, in the very beginning, there was a certain amount of dueling interest. It was a residue from the 18th century, really. So they got out there, and Noddy, I'm trying to remember the way Noddy put it, and I can't. Noddy described it so perfectly, see. He said he was standing there waiting to get started, and the seconds were taking care of preparing everything, see. And Noddy said he could hear the birds sing for the first time in his life. He said it was still, and he was paralyzed with fear, and he said all he could hear was the birds singing in the trees. And he said it was the worst sound he ever heard. It sounded like death. He said, that's being scared. And he admitted he was really frightened. He had never fought with a shark.
How hard would it be to fence when you're that scared?
Oh boy, you know. And Noddy was recognized in Europe as just one of the best fencers alive, you know, in foil or épée. So he had the equipment to survive a duel. He was a very good sport épée fencer. So the command to fight was given, and they went out and exchanged a few blade contacts, you know, and the guy lunged, and he nicked Noddy under his arm, Just a nick, see.
So that could have stopped the duel if they wanted.
Yeah, that could have.
Because it was blood.
Noddy could have stopped it there. But Noddy said at that moment he lost his fear. he said if that was the nick that sent that man to his grave, you know, that's, I think the guy died from what happened to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God, I don't know why I don't remember this. I read that book. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm not sure the guy died. Anyway, let me finish the story. So he got the nick, and then he was pissed, and he lost his fear. You know,
And then he could just be naughty.
Then he could be naughty, and nobody wanted to face him with a sharp point. That would be stupid. And the guy made several other attacks and failed on them, and Noddy hit him each time with a counterattack. And the first one hit him here, the lower arm.
So the guy could have stopped then too.
He could have stopped.
So any of them could have stopped, and they just kept going.
Yeah, the guy was enraged. He said, "My God, you know, this is humiliating." And the second one hit him here. Noddy hit him 6 times, and 2 of them hit him in the chest and went in 6 inches.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that's the last one in the chest. That's when the guy threw his épée down and quit. And they took him away.
Bit slow, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, he was a bit slow. Boy, 6 inches into your chest, boy. And Noddy said he had just one of the best dinners that night that he'd ever eaten.
God.
He said he survived his duel. And if you haven't read Noddy's book, you should. Not just to read the duel.
Not that it's easy to get hold of.
It can be found if you search search libraries, small town libraries that don't have fencing traffic. Sometimes have a book on their shelves, left over from years ago. See. But anyway, if you read Noddy's book, there's the duel, and then of course if you read the book, you're going to be reading the best written material on fencing that was ever written.
Except for yours.
I got to admit, his is better than mine.
Really?
Yeah, I can. Now, Noddy was a wonderful writer. Let me just say, Elder Noddy, not only was he a great fencer, but he was a great writer, and he was a great raconteur. You know, he was just a very intelligent man living at a time that was just suited for him, which was the 20s, the Roaring 20s.